All right, so that last video seemed to go over well enough that I thought I'd keep going. There were a few things that I thought about doing today, and then I realized that I think I wanted to start by talking more specifically about something I touched on, and that's the idea of suicide. So I'm going to talk about it in kind of three different ways. I think maybe only two. Um, I have I do have some visual aids this time. I'm thinking about including, I'm trying to include what I need to. All of those I'll make sure to include links in the description for the video, so you can, do that look down below, look down below thing that people do, to get more information about that. Um, so first, I want to talk a little bit more about suicidal ideation, and that's a fancy word for thinking about killing yourself. All right. Um, some of us just, I guess, just do it. Like it's something about the way our brains are wired that makes us think about doing that in a way that is atypical. Okay. Um, I'm kind of cautious about using the word normal because I know there are people I've talked to people who think that normal is boring and all that stuff. But there is something to be, it's worth considering what it means to be typical, what it means to be kind of in kind of functional parameters. You know, like we look at this and we say, well, I have brown hair, I'm tall, and these kind of things. Um, and my tallness makes me atypical in a way that makes it a little bit more of a challenge to function in this society, right? Doorknobs are just a little bit too low for me. Drinking fountains are too low for me. Chairs, I don't sit comfortably in chairs, and this makes it so I'm not part of the way the world works, right? And so this concept of normalcy is worth considering outside of this kind of knee-jerk reaction to say, well, I'm not normal. Of course I'm not normal. Um, and so when we're talking about normalcy, at least in terms of what I am, I don't want you to get caught up in that. Um, some of us are just not normal, and sometimes that lack of normalcy can be a problem. Okay. Um, so for those of you who don't know what that looks like, it's something that I've dealt with myself, and it's just that there's we think about killing ourselves, um, and I'll talk about kind of gradations of that. I don't anticipate right now a future where that's something that I seriously pursue. Okay, um, but I know how I would, and that's not normal. That's very atypical to do that. So those of you who actually are aware of how you would kill yourself, be aware that's atypical. That's not something that's not something we should think about. Um, there have been times in my past though when I've been in a situation where it was real enough that I was honestly concerned. At one point, I actually gave a gun that I had to my brother to sell for me because I wasn't sure that I was safe with that. Okay, and that was something I did on my own. I'm back in a place where I'm not worried about that anymore. But there was a time. Okay, um, and so as we're talking about this, be aware that I at least understand those feelings. I get this idea that maybe, and this is one of those things that I think those of you who don't ever have to deal with suicidal ideation can understand. It's just that it's too much. Typically when we get into this point, and again, be aware, I'm only talking about my experience and the experience of people that I've talked to about this. I'm not a professional. I'm probably going to say that more than I need to in this, but it's worth pointing out. I'm not a professional. I'm not a mental health professional. Um, but there are times when the world just gets overwhelming. That there's so much pressure, and right now is one of those times when I imagine that there are more of us that are suffering from this. Um, it's hard. It's hard to function. It's or sometimes we feel like that we're a waste of resources, that the world would be better off without us. That I've been in a situation where there have been times when I thought that my wife and kids would be better off without me. Then she could be free to find someone better than me to share her life with, and someone who would be better than me taking care of my kids. And I imagine some of you right now are saying, well, but that's not true. You're great. You're wonderful. And this is one of the challenges to it, right? Is our internal monologue is telling us something that doesn't line up with our external reality. That's one of the problems with depression and a lot of these issues, anxiety. The the internal monologue that's going on is telling us something that doesn't line up in a way that makes our reality weird. And it creates a reality for us that could lead us to doing things that we shouldn't do. One of the really popular phrases that's tied to suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think that there's some merit to that. So we'll talk a little bit about what you can do in dealing with people that are suicidal, but I wanted to talk to those of you who are suicidal or have dealt with this or who might deal with this. So one of the things that I wanted to show you, and I really love the concept behind this, there's a website called Project Semicolon, and I hope this works. I hope you can see this. We'll see how it works. But Project Semicolon comes from the frequently, hey, where is it? There's no semicolon on here. Anyway, it comes from this frequently misused piece of punctuation, the semicolon, right? Give me 1 second. I want to. Yeah, I'm kind of winging it here a little bit because I wanted to get you a really good image. Right. So a semicolon is used when an author could have chosen to end their sentence but chose not to, right? So this is the idea that you reach a point where there feels like there's an ending, where it feels like you are ready to end things, but instead of that full stop, that period, that this is it, it's over, you use a semicolon and you move past it and you keep going. You keep moving through life, and that's one of the ideas behind Project Semicolon. So that one will be down in the description. And also just, you know, really quickly here, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. One of the things that I strongly urge you do is if you're ever at a point where you're thinking, you know what, this is just not worth it, talk to someone, okay? If you have access to me, if you're one of my, if you're a Facebook friend or whatever, talk to me about it, okay? Because one of the realities for, like, again, this is something I don't have stats, but I have done some reading on this. Almost every single person who actually attempts suicide later on regrets it, because in the moment, in this moment where you're feeling like it's not worth it, it's all over, I just can't handle it anymore. In that moment, it feels like there's no way out, right? It feels like this is the best solution to the problems of your life. And if you can get through that moment, then what you're going to find on the other side is that it wasn't the best solution. There are other ways of coping with this. My feelings when I got into those dark spaces, my feelings were very real to me. But since then, after that, one of the things that keeps me going is recognizing all the good. That really cheesy, what is it? I think it's an Irving Berlin song. When I am tired and cannot sleep, I count my blessings instead of sheep, and I fall asleep counting my blessings. It's a beautiful song, and there's some value to it. There's also a song in my church, when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost. Oh gosh, I can't remember the lines now, but the chorus is, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. And that's the idea that when we're in these moments of darkness, it can help to look and say, like, one of the things that I love is I had a motorcycle for a couple of years and I loved riding that thing. And if I stay alive, I might get to a point where I can have a motorcycle again and ride it again, and that would be great. And I know that one's really weird, but it kind of works for me. Also, I have beautiful moments with my wife and my kids. I have these wonderful points of connection with people that really make my life enjoyable. And if I were to do something permanent with that, I wouldn't get those moments anymore. I wouldn't get to see, the really nice days. And so it's small things that really help me to get through it, to look at the little things. Not, you know, I'm not looking at publishing a book because I don't have the motivation, but I do have the motivation to maybe get out and look at a sunrise, or that I really enjoy those mornings going camping when I've had a decent night's rest at least, and I can get up and the world is kind of waking up at the same time I do. I don't sleep in well when I camp most of the time, but I enjoy those mornings. So it's those little things. So be aware of those and think about those and keep those in mind when you're trying to deal with this. Okay. So before you do anything permanent, reach out. Okay, that's one of the things that would be really good, is just to kind of do that. For those of you who don't have to deal with this, but you worry about someone that might be considering this, this is QPR, and they use I've gone through training for this multiple times actually, and yeah, it's really fairly simple. The idea is that if you think someone is potentially thinking about hurting themselves, question them, ask them, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And one of the concerns that people have is that, I'll come back to this in a second. One of the concerns that people have is that people who, they might give them the idea to kill themselves, and that's nonsense. I know those of you who don't suffer from depression, who don't suffer from suicidal ideation, might not believe this. You cannot make someone think about killing themselves. Either they have already, or they're more normal and the idea of killing themselves is just not. They're going to say, no, that's really weird. Why would I think about killing myself? That's the way a typical person reacts. People like me, people who have suicidal ideation might say, yeah, I have. And sometimes just that question, that opening up of the conversation, is beautiful and amazing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, I think, in the future. But knowing that someone cares enough to say, hey, are you okay? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Can open up the door. Okay? So you ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And if they say, yeah, I'm thinking about killing myself or hurting myself or anything like that, then you persuade them to stick around. You say, okay, look, how about you wait? How about you wait until maybe we get you in to see a medical professional, okay, to see a psychological professional. And that's what they refer. So persuade them to stick around long enough to get help, and then refer them to someone who knows what they're doing. And this is also incredibly important, because you don't have the expertise unless you happen to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist and you're watching this for whatever reason. But I almost guarantee if you're watching this, you don't have the medical expertise to help these people the way they need help. Okay? And this is not me preaching something I don't practice. Every time I have a student come into my office and we start talking about depression and suicide, I recommend they go to the Wellness Center here on campus. I talk to them about getting help because that's important. QPR, and this is the reason why they use those letters, QPR is meant to be similar to CPR. CPR is a stopgap to keep someone alive long enough for them to get the help that they need. Okay? It's not a solution to the problem. It's a way of getting them to the point where they can find a solution to their problem. So CPR keeps someone alive long enough for the EMTs to get there. QPR is to help people stay alive long enough for them to get to the professionals that can help them. All right. So I was going to go a little bit more into this, but I have a 15-minute stop on this particular program that I'm using to record this, and I think that's not a bad thing. So this is the start of a conversation about suicide, which I might come back to. I'm very open to talk about what you guys want me to, but for now, this is what I've got. I hope it helped.